You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
This episode is brought to you by Summer of Soul. For 50 years, footage of the 1969 Harlem Cultural Festival sat forgotten, keeping an incredible event from history hidden until now. Directed by Questlove, Summer of Soul features never-before-seen performances from Sly and the Family Stone, Gladys Knight and the Pips, B.B. King, and more. Join them and relive a joyous celebration of Black and Latinx culture. Now playing in theaters and on Hulu.
Hey you, do you have any plans this year? How's that going? Did you get 2020'd? Well, welcome to a brand new podcast called 2020'd, where myself, Benny Goodman, and my good friends Corey Paisley and Siobhan Cronin from the band Lost Symphony also got 2020'd.
And since the world ended this year, we decided why not just check in with some of our friends in the music industry and see how everyone's doing.
We're going to get a candid look at life on and off the stage, as well as the mindset of some of the most successful people in the entertainment industry.
New episodes drop every Sunday and Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern.
And you can listen at 2020-d.com, soundtalentmedia.com, or on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome to the Punk Rock MBA podcast.
What's up, everybody? I'm Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock MBA podcast. Today's episode is a bonus. This is my portion of when I was on the Danny Diablo show. Very cool. If you're not familiar with Danny, you probably should be. If you're into hardcore at all, you know who he is. But he is a legend in every sense of the word. He was in Crown of Thorns and Scarhead. You may know him as Lord Ezek from those projects. He's been a solo artist under the name Danny Diablo, and I don't know, if you want to hear some crazy hardcore stories, just go Google him, because there are lots and lots of stories about Danny. I was thrilled that they invited me to be on their show to talk about what I do, and so I just thought I would share that here for anybody that enjoys listening to me talk, which hopefully you do if you're listening to this. Also, make sure you check out his show. There's a link to that in the show notes. It's called Diablo's Den. Lots of cool interviews with various hardcore legends that you would be familiar with. So check that out at the link in the description and enjoy the rest of the show.
We're back with our first guest of the night. I want to welcome one of my favorite YouTubers who I've been watching for a couple of years now, I think. Randomly started showing up in all my videos, and I hit him up on email. We've kind of became some friends, and here we are. We're excited to have him on the show. I want to welcome Finn McKenty from Punk Rock MBA.
Yeah!
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Finn, thank you so much for joining us. This is really cool because I know that Danny just did your show, which was awesome. Anybody who hasn't heard
so much for that.
Please check that out. We'll have links and everything for that. But we were psyched to get you on our show because, dude, I listen to so much of your content, and I'm dying to pick your brain for once and kind of reverse it on you, because I feel like I know you from listening to the podcast, your YouTube, all of these things. So, again, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course.
I got to ask you, the first thing I always like to ask is, how did you decide that you wanted to interview Danny for your show, outside of the obvious, infamous answers? There's got to be something there, because most of the things you do are pretty well-researched, should I say.
Yeah. Well, I would like to think that I am able to kind of look past the surface level stuff in just life in general, and obviously it's weird to say Danny, because, I've known you as music for like 25 years. But obviously there's all the stories and the, blah, 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 and all that stuff's cool and whatnot. But my introduction to him was Train Yard Blues, which is really not like that at all.
It's totally like, it's so funny that when people hear Train Yard Blues, let's say like now new fans, they hear their Danny Diablo stuff and whatever, but when they hear Train Yard Blues, they're like, "Oh
is
my
this
God,
the same?" They're like, "Is this the same person?"
The lyrics, my girlfriend's always like, "Yeah, like the lyrics are so amazing and it's so like from the heart," and I'm like, that's the first lyrics I ever wrote. So it's insane. Like it's like, to me, Crown Thorns will always be my heart. So I can't wait to do another Crown Thorns record.
There's been a few times in my life, I forget the name of the song, but there's been a few times in my life where I've done something really fucking dumb, and I was like at the doctor or waiting for something to come in, and I heard the guess I'll have to learn the hard way.
Head check. Yeah, head check.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking like, fuck, please let me get away with this one.
So I want to just jump right into the interview, Finn, because I think one of your paths is super interesting to me, because I think a lot of people don't understand how much work actually goes into producing, say, one of your videos. I think a lot of people just assume it's like, I'm going to throw a video up, I'm going to start this channel, I'm going to get 1 million views, I'm going to make all this money. I mean, am I correct in sort of assuming that that's sort of the norm?
Well, I think people know that it's work to do YouTube. Maybe they don't. I don't know. But it's kind of, I guess, to give people an idea, I would say I probably put into the video itself, I probably put somewhere around, 12 hours of work or something into each one. And then on top of that, it's just like, being in a band or something, there's, posting on social media and responding to comments and all that other shit that, takes up more time. And I consider that all part of the same thing, because I wouldn't be able to, make the videos without doing that stuff, because it's, interacting with people and stuff. That's how I learn what people want and what they think. And sometimes they, I'm sure this happens to you guys, like 10 people tell me to check out some band and I'm like, all right, I need to check these guys out. And then I do. And it's, I understand why and all that stuff. So, and then obviously, like, it's just being around the scene for so long. All that's all a product of it. Like, I couldn't make the videos that I do without, seeing Earth Crisis 25 years ago or whatever.
Well,
you know what I mean?
And that's one of the things I enjoy the most about your videos, is that it's like it's super genuine. It's like you can tell that you're like a hardcore dude who's gone to like a bunch of the same shows that we have. And again, it was really interesting to me, because I can't remember the first video I watched of yours, but again, I was probably watching, some kind of live video, and it, the algorithm started kicking in, and I subscribed, and I was like, this is pretty cool. I had a ton of really good content. And again, I still remember reaching out to you with my first email, kind of just like being like, your stuff's awesome. And we were talking about music, and, it was just really cool, because there was not a lot of content, or at least not in front of my face, that it was in our sort of scene like that, you know?
It seems like when you speak, like when the first time I saw you, you were speaking and talking about 90s hardcore, and I was like, what? Oh, and then James was like, it's Finn. And I was like, like, he's telling, like, it caught my eye, and I sat down, I was kept on watching, and I was like, this is like something like someone that is telling the new people what was going on in the 90s. And it's cool. A lot of people don't talk about that stuff. I mean, a lot of people just talk about what's going on now, and it's cool to see, like, even the pop punk stuff. It's cool because, like, I was part of that situation somehow, because of Travis Barker and all the stuff. I was involved with the transplants, so it's really that whole scene that, like, it was cool. You know what I mean? So like.
And for anybody who hasn't watched Finn's videos yet, I mean, they're made in such a digestible way, which is another reason I can enjoy them, is like, you don't need to devote a whole bunch of time. Like, I know something like our show, it's a sit down, we watch, you have to kind of sit down and take it in, but Finn has these really great things. Finn, when you were launching your show, like your channel, was that something you were conscious of, was like the lengths of videos and things you were going after versus, say, trying to create these more drawn out, longer videos?
Well, I had to try a few things to kind of figure out what works. Part of that is like the YouTube algorithm. It rewards longer videos up to a point, because, the longer you stay on the site, the more ads they can show you, the more money they make. So they want you to make longer videos. So that's kind of how I arrived on it in part, but also just like, I remember watching like MTV News back in the day, or MTV Raps, or any of those like kind of shows where, you'd be really excited to like sit down and watch Headbangers Ball every week and find out what's going on and stuff. And that's kind of what I sort of want it to be, or a zine for that matter. Like, I think the way that I discovered a lot of the New York bands was from that zine In Effect, which...
Oh, cool.
Yeah, In Effect. Chris is the band.
Yeah, I still talk to him sometimes on Facebook.
That's good.
Yeah, that was like my window into New York, because I lived in Seattle, and back then, especially like 94, 95 in Seattle, there was nobody in Seattle was aware of anything happening in New York, really. I'm not saying that I'm so smart. I bought it at Tower, just like anybody else.
I would think that to us growing up, it was the metal maniacs would have one page in the New York, like Leeway on it, Crumb Suckers, Cro-Mags, and I was like, oh man, like they finally someone recognizes us. But
Right.
it was like Maximum Rock and Roll didn't even want to look at it.
Fuck no. Yeah, they hated all you guys. So yeah, when I found In Effect, that was really cool. I think the first one had like Fahrenheit 451 or Sub-Zero or something on the cover, and that was like to me my window into all the stuff that was too underground for like metal maniacs to care about or whatever. Because the bands like Leeway and Cro-Mags and stuff, obviously great, but those were, to me, like the big bands,
Yeah, definitely.
And, stuff like you guys was the next level below there. And so, that's how I remember I really liked, like Chris's band, I think he put it out, Cold Front. Some like pretty obscure shit, because of that. And that's kind of what I try to do with YouTube is like, just, document the stuff that, there's nobody else with an audience my size that is talking about, irate or whatever.
That's one of the coolest things, man, again, about the channel is just how much different stuff you're exposed to. I'll say even for me, who's like, I'm going to be 42 years old. Like, dude, just even hearing about the newer shit, I like to think I'm somebody who's exposed to as much stuff as possible. Dude, the shit that I've heard about on your stuff, like the emo rap revivals and all this shit. It's like, I can't necessarily like vibe with it, but I get it and I get why it's happening.
Transplants, though.
Yeah. Well, this is what I related to. It's sort of like, like that generation probably looks at like our kind of music as like their dad's shit because that's like their age. Yeah. So that stuff is so different and so weird. We don't like it. It's their underground, and I back it. The weirder, the better kind of thing. I always think,
punk rock, baby.
Yeah, that's exactly that's punk rock in 2021. So
yeah, if old people like it, then that's probably a bad sign,
right?
People now, if there's anybody younger listening to this, like it might be, hard to understand or believe this, but. The 90s stuff that Danny and all those guys were part of, like, punks hated that stuff back then.
Yeah,
it was considered metal and they hated it. And it was like not at all like cool or accepted whatsoever.
Definitely. Yeah. I definitely understand it because like us growing up, like me growing up, me, Hoya from Madball, and Q, we were like the punk rock kids. We were like hardcore kids, almost like hip hop influence, but with street kids. And like Craig Satari said, he blames me for ruining hardcore. And I brought everyone from Queens, all my friends that grew up, to all the shows. So it was like all different characters. It was funny, and they really loved the music. They got into the music. These guys, and these guys were psychos. So. But they would like, look at punk rock guy with like crash shirt on, like, all doped up. We'd be like, look at this piece of shit. Like back, growing up, and be like, what the fuck is that? They would bug out and stuff like that. And like, it's punk rock. So it's just crazy. But once you go to shows and you meet other people who are just as fucked up as you and just had the same problem, especially during high school and after high school. And you're like, I just want to go get away from fucking my job, my wife, my kid, and just a few hours of music and go back home to reality. Well, that's what it's about. Personally,
I liked punk, and I still do, but there's just something different about it. Like the song "Punk Rock Fantasy," I always liked. At least by the '90s, it's like, what are you doing? It's not 1981 anymore. You know what I mean? You're just like, this is just like cosplaying as like. The guy from Discharge. Like, what are you doing?
I know Discharge, GBH, the Crass, Exploited. Those are
all the patch bands.
Yeah, but those bands were like
cool. But it's like, do you need to be doing that in 1993? No.
and those guys, Discharge changed the sound of the world with the guitar tone. So it's like metal guitar and punk. So it was cool as fuck, man. So.
Support for this podcast comes from Invent Together. According to studies, less than 13% of all inventors who hold a U.S. patent are women. Black and Hispanic college graduates patent at half the rate of their white counterparts. But we can fix that by increasing participation in innovation and patenting by underrepresented groups. It would quadruple the number of American inventors and increase annual GDP by almost $1 trillion. Invent Together is a coalition of organizations, companies, universities, and concerned citizens committed to ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to invent and patent. Because the more diverse the American patent system gets, the stronger and more successful our nation will become. What can you do to help diverse inventors patent and unleash economic opportunity? Find out at inventtogether.org. Learn more and take action today.
This episode is brought to you by HP Instant Ink. No one is reading your mind, but HP Instant Ink knows when your printer is running low and sends you new cartridges, so you never have to think about ink. Save up to 50%. You'll pay less than $5 a month for ink and never run out again. Find out if your printer is eligible and enroll today at hpinstantink.com. Conditions apply. For details, visit hp.com/instantink Spotify.
Hey, you. Do you have any plans this year? How's that going? Did you get 2020? Well, welcome to a brand new podcast called 2020, where myself, Benny Goodman, and my good friends Corey Payson and Siobhan Cronin from the band Lost Symphony also got 2020.
And since the world ended this year, we decided why not just check in with some of our friends in the music industry and see how everyone's doing.
We're going to get a candid look at life on and off the stage, as well as the mindset of some of the most successful people in the entertainment industry.
New episodes drop every Sunday and Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern.
And you can listen at 2020-d.com, soundtalentmedia.com, or on your favorite podcast app.
So I want to talk a little bit too about, Finn, for those who might not be familiar, before, or I don't know if you still do it, but before jumping into YouTube, you did audio software stuff with music, and you worked on some pretty cool stuff. Tell us a little bit about that sort of, journey and kind of what was involved in that, because you've worked with some really cool bands in that world.
Yeah. Well, if anybody's familiar with a product called Nail the Mix, that's a thing I'm a partner in. So we every month we have a new mixer on and a new band on. You get the actual multi-track files from the retail album, like it's like straight off their hard drive. So we've had cool. I don't know, we've had like Dillinger on, Day to Remember, Bring Me the Horizon, Fall Out Boy, Lamb of God, Suicide Silence, Gojira,
awesome.
Like all the kind of big names and the producers along with those who are all brilliant, Andrew Wade and, Steve Evans, he owes us a session. We had to make that one up, but, tons of great people on. So I've been doing that, since 2017. Before that, I worked for a company called Creative Live, which is an online education company for creative folks where, I guess to toot my own horn, the way that people do audio education now, like all the live streaming stuff you see, a lot of the YouTube kind of stuff. We were the first company to do like live streaming audio education. I worked with Periphery, Between the Buried and Me, had like Todd from Nails and Doc from God Forbid.
Sick, yeah.
And, I'm kind of drawing a blank at who else, but
that's cool, man.
You've done, like I said, you've done a lot of cool stuff in that space, which it was interesting to me again as the more that I was, gotten to, I don't want to say know you, but I feel like I've known you because I've listened to you and, taken in all your content. The more interested I was in kind of all the stuff that you've been a part of and how it seemed like a natural journey for you to be on YouTube. Did that at the time, like when you started it, did it feel like natural to you, or were you more just like, I think I'm going to try? Like, what was your kind of explain to me going into that space there?
Well, I started out doing zines back in, back when I was a kid. I started my first fanzine when I was 14 or something. So like 92 or 93, something like that. And to me, and then I did those for years until they sort of stopped making sense. And I started doing blogs then because, blog is just a zine online. And then blogs kind of stopped being relevant. And I was like, well, I guess YouTube is the thing now. So to me, YouTube is just the same as the zines that I made when I was a kid, except it's a video.
It's a visual.
Yeah.
I actually, like, when in the fanzine, back in the day when you used to read it, and they say something, you're like, yo, did he say? It's almost like you're like, what do you mean? But when you say something,
right,
you can see, but you can see when you're sarcastic, it's funny, so you'll start laughing. But when you see when you're serious too, so that's good. It's like, plus the kids nowadays, the attention spans are like this, man. They're not gonna sit and read through a zine. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? And me getting older, I can't fucking see shit without putting like glasses on. So I'm happy to see fucking YouTube thing. Right? So it's cool.
Well, and it's cool too because oh, go ahead, Finn.
Well, it's the same kind of thing that I wanted to do when I was a kid with zines. Is the reason I started doing it is because I was into like basically at the time, what was sort of an obscure set of things, I was into like hardcore, death metal, and graffiti, which back then it was not common to be into those three things. Now I guess that's pretty normal, but in 93 it wasn't. And I was like, well, if nobody else is going to talk about this stuff, I guess I will. And that's the same thing I do now. If like there's some cool artist, you know, that I think is doing something interesting, then I'm going to talk about him because nobody else is. And it's just strange to me that like with hardcore, there's this weird gap of like, you know, history that nobody talks about. There's a million fucking documentaries about Cro-Mags and AF and all the kind of 80s New York bands, which obviously are legendary and deserve to have documentaries made about them. But it's like it stops in like 1989, you know? Like nobody even talks about Madball. Like in the media.
It's you know what it is. I could talk about this, make you guys laugh.
Yeah, please do.
I'm telling the real story why shit happened with this. In New York City, the old bands and Nazi Front, you know, Sheer Terror, Murphy's Law, all those guys, you know, they changed the world for us. I mean, we like then we came out, and when we came out, it was a whole different world. It was way more dangerous. I mean, it was just crazy. But we were more into the graffiti, and we were more into like the street shit. We were street, like they say, these guys talk about street stuff, but we were like real street kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I really think that you know, in 1995, Frank Pavich did the documentary New York Hardcore Package thing, and it was cool. It was fucking cool, but it was like only a little part of that thing. You know what I mean? We were at Crown Thorns when they captured a little bit of the craziness in it. You know what I mean? But Drew Stone came out with his, and it was like, everyone's going to be like, they should have done this, or should have that. And I tell them, like, if you could do better, then do it. You know what I mean? Don't get mad at the guys who did it. You know what I mean? Like, then do your own. But the thing is, like, Scarhead, Madball, VOD, all the Bulldoze, there should be a thing on the music. You know,
like VOD was a really big band back
then. They had a song with Phil from Pantera.
They were huge. Finn, we just announced.
Nobody talks about them now.
We just announced at the top of this show. I just signed Tim Williams' new band to my label, so we're doing a new EP.
Oh, cool.
But I'm with, you know, I had said that I'm a huge fan of those bands because that's my era, sort of, you know, like when I first started getting into shows, and like, you know, to work with him and do a show with Danny, it's like it blows my mind, kind of, you know.
But people get upset.
I don't know that I'm the person necessarily to tell that story because, you know, I'm from Seattle, but it's like, again, if nobody else is going to talk about VOD, then I guess I will. And if someone else can come along and do it better than me, great. But, you know, I think of it like we're all writing a book together and I can just add my page. This is like how I saw it. And, you know, you could do it your way and that's cool. And like, it's not, you know, it's not like a competition. But it's just interesting to me how certain, you know, parts of history get forgotten. And I don't look at myself as like a documentarian or anything like that because I cover a lot of newer stuff too. But that is one of the things that I like to do and sort of connect the dots from, you know, from the past to the present.
Definitely. And you know, and I'm not taking any credit away from the people who, Frank Pavich and Drew Stone did a great job. But remember, Drew Stone's older. Drew Stone's in the first wave, like Jimmy and them. So there was stuff in there I didn't even know about. I mean, and sometimes, and if you go to the new Drew Stone, the Hardcore Chronicles, which I'm in it, they talk about my music. They use my music to talk about beating people up and graffiti. I'm like, you know, I got a few albums, a few records that are staples of New York hardcore, and you talk about me fighting, Gavin, telling I'm like the best fighter in the whole scene. They're like, that's cool and everything, but I want to look like a Neanderthal. I'm an artist. I'm an artist in all kinds of ways. Literature.
That's high praise coming from Gavin, though.
Yeah, I know. It's cool, but you know what? It's like I'm at an age right now that I don't even have to do anything. I just like sit there but it was like it's in the street. That's cool. But I can't show my mom that. You mean, Mom, hey, Mom, look at oh yeah, I beat up everyone. I remember that. It's crazy, but I want someone to do like me personally. I talk to Drew Stone all the time. I was like, I want someone to do like the Starhead documentary, which would be the craziest documentary. Like all the singers, Puerto Rican Mike, and you know all the Lupa Sub-Zero, Boston Mike, rest in peace. But to show the world how crazy we were on the road, and how we traveled the whole world, and people would be like, "Oh my God, this is something." And we're from that scene. We were torn with Hatebreed, we're torn with VOD, we're torn with the Misfits, we're torn with Gwar, we're torn with Seven Dust, we're torn with like all these bands. You know, like, and it was a great part of my life, and I love it. I still love doing that. I love seeing the reaction of all these people, all different walks of life, all different genres of music, and they come out, the graffiti writers, the hoods, the fucking, it's something that we meshed all these cultures together and represented New York hardcore. I want to do something, but you mean so? But I'm waiting.
It makes me happy that for whatever I can do, I did a video about New York hardcore, which I felt weird about doing because, again, it's not really my scene, but I'm like, well, I'm going to do it. That has like 330,000 views now, which is 330,000 people that heard me talk about Scarhead and all these other bands.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
That, probably the majority of those people weren't familiar with all that stuff. So if there's anything I can do, then that's cool. And so it makes me happy that there's people like you and Hoya that noticed it and thought it was well done.
Thank you so much about that.
Yeah, man, your channel is super well done. Before we let you go, Finn, I want to talk quick. You started a podcast at the end of was it at the middle of last year or
January of 2020?
So January 2020.
Yeah, 2020.
Tell us a little bit about the podcast. Was that just a natural extension of what you were doing with YouTube? Or, I know you have a producer, and it's done very, very well, man. So tell our audience a little bit about that. We just joined up with you guys on Sound Talent Media, so we're very excited. So shout out to those guys. It's going to be a huge help for us.
How big is your team with you, Finn? How many people, like you have an editor and all, like, how's that work?
One person. If you guys need help, I'd be happy to connect you with her. She's great. She's just editor and producer. So basically I record it and then I upload the stuff to Google Drive and she does everything else.
Sick.
Oh, amazing. That's why I got Jay.
Yeah. There you go.
Tell us a little bit about starting that though, Finn, because it was pretty cool. It felt like, as a viewer, it was like, wow, this dude's already doing that and now doing this. I felt like it was taking on a lot of work there for you as a viewer. What does that feel like for you?
Well, the podcast is a way for me to kind of talk in obviously more depth, but also about different stuff. I consider myself a business guy more than
shout out to your second channel for those who don't know.
Yeah, I went to school for business. That's what I spent the last 20 years on. There's a reason I didn't play in bands. It's because I was actually more passionate about. I'm not putting it down. It's just I'm more passionate about business. And especially the sort of intersection of creativity and business, which, we all know how hard it is to do both of those things. To actually support yourself doing something creative is fucking hard. And I would like to think that I know a little bit about it. And, that's basically what the show is about. It's, just interviews with people who have found a way to, do something cool with themselves. It's musicians, YouTubers, entrepreneurs of some other kind. Like my friend Randall Pitch has a clothing company called Live Fit. It's like a fitness apparel brand. He's like a metalcore, Orange County, metalcore kind of kid. Sorry, Long Beach. Yeah. Just kind of wanted a way to sit down with those people and talk business a little bit more about hey, you got your clothing in PacSun. How exactly do you do that?
Right. That's cool. Yeah.
Who do you call? What's the pitch? What exactly do they want to hear? How do you find the buyer? Really just get into detail about all those things, because nobody tells you the details like that.
Right.
And that's the stuff that matters.
Well, that's one of the things I always like.
Who do you contact at the label if you want to license something, and what do you tell them when you do?
Yep. That's I always like that about your channel and your stories, because again, it always felt like it filled in the gaps in those things, and one of the things that Danny and I always talk about on our channel too is that there is all these little gaps in between the story. It's not just one day I woke up and then, and that's kind of going back to my question to you is all people probably see you and go oh, this dude just sits there in front of his cool scene and talks about hardcore and throws it up online, not really realizing that it's you're editing shit, you're writing shit down.
Plus, but you're doing your own job too.
You have a whole life outside of this too, you
have a whole life, and people understand. When people have kids or a significant other, shit gets crazy, bro. You're doing something. You know how people can be like, hey, you gotta pay attention to me. I'm like, oh my god, it's I gotta finish I'm sorry, baby. I got to do the Scarhead song tomorrow. Just gonna hear that shit.
Shout out to Storm.
Yeah, and I'm married, and I always put my wife first because because you have to. I've made that mistake before in the past, like a lot of people, and
happy wife, happy life.
Yep,
exactly.
That's it, bro. And I'm not crying about it. Obviously, I did printing for like 7 years, which sucks shit. That's like, standing in one place, breathing fumes, like punching holes in paper for 7 hours. So anything is better than that. But it is a lot of work. But it's like anything else. If you keep doing it, you're not going to get worse. You're only going to get better.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's cool, man. So, Finn, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Where can everybody find you online? Give a plug to your Instagram, the both YouTube channels.
Your Patreon, too.
The Patreon. Oh, yeah. Shout out your Patreon, too.
Yes.
Give everybody a rundown on where to find you.
I'm business mind.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Patreon is awesome. So you can find it's youtube.com/thepunkrockmba. Same thing on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. It's just my name, Finn McKenty, FINNMCKENTY. Podcast and everything I link to from there. Definitely check out my Patreon if you would like to support the stuff that I do, because that really does help a lot. And thanks very much for having me, and welcome.
Anytime, my brother.
Yeah, man.
Finn, thank you so much.
Finn, thanks so much for joining us, man. We were really excited to have you on, man. So big shout out to you, dude. And again, everybody should check out Finn online. Dude, thanks for having us on. Or thanks for coming on our show.
All right, my friends, that does it for this episode of the podcast. If you made it this far, thank you. Thank you for listening. We sincerely appreciate each and every one of you. If you want to help the show, there's a couple things that you can do. First of all, share it on social media. If you share it, tag us, tag Finn McKenty, that's me, and tag Deanna Chapman, that's a producer. Second thing you can do, if you really, really, really love us and really want to support us, you can support us on Patreon. There's a link to that in the show notes. You can leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever else you're listening to this, or you can do none of that, and you can just sit at home thinking about how awesome this podcast is. That works too. Again, thank you very much to each and every one of you for listening. We sincerely appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, you. Do you have any plans this year? How's that going? Did you get 2020? Well, welcome to a brand new podcast called 2020, where myself, Benny Goodman, and my good friends Corey Payson and Siobhan Cronin from the band Lost Symphony also got 2020.
And since the world ended this year, we decided why not just check in with some of our friends in the music industry and see how everyone's doing.
We're going to get a candid look at life on and off the stage, as well as the mindset of some of the most successful people in the entertainment industry.
New episodes drop every Sunday and Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern.
And you can listen at 2020-d.com, soundtalentmedia.com, or on your favorite podcast app.